The dust danced across the barren plains like a mocking reminder of what could never grow, much like the empty womb that had earned Isabella Spencer her cruel nickname. Folks in the small town of Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1875, weren't known for their kindness when it came to women who couldn't bear children, especially when their husbands abandoned them for it. Isabella Bell, to the few who still showed her kindness, stood on the porch of her modest homestead, watching the horizon with eyes that had long since dried of tears. The whispers followed her everywhere in town. Barren Bell, they called her, as if her worth as a woman could be measured only by what her body could or couldn't produce. 5 years had passed since her husband Thomas had left her for a younger woman from the next county over, claiming he needed a real wife who could give him sons. The homestead was all she had now, that, and the strength she'd found in solitude. Belle wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as the wind picked up. At 32, she wasn't old, but life had worn its path across her face in fine lines that spoke of both sorrow and resilience. Her chestnut hair, once her pride, was now often simply pinned back without much thought. What was the point of vanity when the only eyes that saw her most days belonged to her livestock? The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled her from her thoughts. Visitors were rare out here, 5 miles from town. Belle squinted against the setting sun, making out the silhouette of a rider. As he drew closer, she could see he was slumped in the saddle, swaying dangerously. "Hello," she called out cautiously, reaching for the rifle she kept by the door. The horse came to a stop in her yard, and the man raised his head with visible effort. "Madam," he managed, before pitching forward and sliding from his saddle to the ground with a heavy thud. Belle dropped the rifle and rushed forward. The stranger was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in trail-worn clothes covered in dust, and she realized with alarm blood. A lot of blood, seeping through his shirt on his left side. His face was obscured by several days' worth of stubble and the wide brim of his hat, but she could tell he was young, perhaps in his late 20s. "Sir, can you hear me?" Belle knelt beside him, checking for signs of life. His pulse was rapid but present. She looked around, knowing there was no one to call for help this far out. It was up to her. With strength born of years working the land alone, Belle managed to half-drag, half-carry the unconscious man inside her home and onto her bed. She cut away his shirt to reveal a bullet wound in his side, ugly and inflamed but thankfully not too deep. The bullet appeared to have passed through, leaving an exit wound that was bleeding freely. As Belle cleaned and dressed the wound with practiced hands, life on the frontier had taught her basic medical skills. She couldn't help but study his face. Strong jaw, straight nose, and dark lashes against tan skin. She wondered what color his eyes might be. As if responding to her thoughts, those eyes suddenly opened a startling blue that reminded her of the summer sky. The man gasped in pain and tried to sit up. "Easy now," Belle said firmly, pushing him back down. "You've been shot. You're safe here, but you need to rest." The stranger's eyes darted around the room before settling on her face. "Who are you?" His voice was deep and hoarse with thirst. "Isabella Spencer, this is my homestead." She reached for a cup of water. "And you are," he hesitated, wincing as he tried to shift position. "Isaac Xavier." "Most folks call me Ike." He accepted the water gratefully, drinking it down in several long gulps. "Well, Mr. Xavier, you've lost a fair amount of blood. You'll be staying put for a while." Belle took the empty cup from him. "I appreciate your help, Mrs. Spencer, but I can't stay." He tried again to rise, only to fall back with a groan. Belle raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome to leave, Mr. Xavier, but I doubt you'll make it past my front door in your condition. Whatever trouble you're running from will have to wait." A shadow crossed his face. What makes you think I'm running from something? Most men who arrive unconscious with bullet holes in them usually are. Belle stood up, smoothing her apron. Rest. I'll make some broth. We can discuss your situation when you're stronger. Over the next few days, Isaac drifted in and out of consciousness as fever took hold. Belle tended to him tirelessly, applying cool compresses to his forehead and changing his bandages. When he was lucid, she fed him broth and tea with honey. When he was delirious, she listened to his ramblings about a child, a promise, and men who were hunting him. On the fourth day, his fever broke. Belle entered the bedroom to find him awake and alert, staring at the ceiling. "You're looking better," she said, setting down a tray with fresh bandages and a bowl of stew. "Thanks to you." His voice was stronger now, his eyes clearer. "I owe you my life, Mrs. Spencer." "Belle," she corrected him automatically. "No one calls me Mrs. Spencer anymore." She didn't elaborate, and he didn't ask. "Belle," he repeated, the name sounding somehow different in his mouth. "You can call me Ike." As she changed his bandages, Belle couldn't help but notice the numerous scars that marked his torso, evidence of a hard life lived. "You're healing well. Another week and you should be able to travel." Ike nodded slowly. "I need to get to Willow Creek. It's important." "That's a good 3 days' ride from here," Belle said. "What's waiting for you there that's worth nearly dying for?" He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed. "My daughter." Belle's hand stilled. "Your daughter, Hannah, she's 5. A soft smile transformed his face. "Her mother died in childbirth. I've been raising her alone with help from my sister in Willow Creek. I left her there while I took a job driving cattle to Kansas." "And the men who shot you?" Ike's expression darkened. "I was on my way back with my pay when I was ambushed. 3 men took everything, my money, my supplies. They would have taken my life too if I hadn't managed to escape." "Bandits?" Belle asked, resuming her task of wrapping fresh bandages around his torso. "Not ordinary ones. I recognized one of them. He works for James Blackwell, a cattle baron who's been trying to force small ranchers out of the territory. I'd had some trouble with him before." Belle felt a chill. Blackwell's reputation extended even to Redemption Creek. "And your daughter is alone." "With my sister," Ike corrected. "But I need to get back to her. I promised I'd be there for her birthday next week." His eyes held a mixture of determination and despair. "I can't let her down." Belle stood up, gathering the used bandages. "You won't be any good to her dead," she said practically. "Get stronger first, then we'll figure out how to get you to Willow Creek." The days fell into a rhythm. Each morning, Belle would tend to her chores, feeding the chickens, milking her cow, tending her small garden before checking on her patient. Ike grew stronger daily, eventually insisting on sitting up, then standing, then helping with small tasks around the house. They talked as they worked. Belle learned that Ike had been a ranch hand most of his life, drifting from job to job until Hannah was born. Since then, he'd been trying to save enough to buy a small place of his own where his daughter could grow up with stability. "What about you?" he asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "How did you end up out here alone?" Belle rarely spoke of her past, but something about Ike's direct gaze made evasion seem pointless. "I was married once. Thomas Spencer. We came out here 12 years ago with big dreams of building a cattle empire." She smiled faintly at the memory. Reality had other plans. "What happened? Drought, disease, bad luck, but we kept trying." Belle's voice grew quieter. "We tried for children too, month after month, year after year. Nothing. Eventually, Thomas decided the problem was me." Ike's brow furrowed. "That's not fair." "Life rarely is," Belle replied with a shrug. "He left 5 years ago, married a girl barely 20 from Silverton County. Last I heard, they have 3 boys already." "I'm sorry," Don't be, I'm not. Belle surprised herself with the realization that she meant it. It was hard at first, but I've made peace with my life. This land is mine. I answer to no one but myself. Ike studied her face in the fading light. They hurt you badly, didn't they? The townsfolk. Belle stiffened. What do you mean? I hear how you talk about town. You avoid it whenever possible. And sometimes when you don't think I'm watching, there's a look in your eyes. He trailed off. Small towns have long memories and sharp tongues, she said after a moment. They called me Barren like it was some kind of disease. Some still do. The women pity me or avoid me, afraid my condition might be catching somehow. The men see a woman without protection and get ideas. Her laugh was bitter. I learned to be handy with a rifle out of necessity. People fear what they don't understand, Ike said quietly. And they can be cruel about things that aren't anyone's fault. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Your daughter, Belle said suddenly. Tell me about her. Ike's face lit up immediately. Hannah, she's a force of nature, smart as a whip and twice as quick, has her mother's eyes green as spring grass, never stops asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do dreams go when we wake up? How do birds know which way is south? He chuckled. Drives my sister crazy sometimes. Belle smiled, picturing this curious child with her endless questions. She sounds wonderful, she is. His expression sobered. Being a father is the only thing I've ever been truly good at. Everything I do for her. She's lucky to have you, Belle said softly. Ike looked at her, his expression unreadable in the growing darkness. I'm the lucky one. The next morning, Belle woke early to find Ike already up and moving around the kitchen. He had managed to brew coffee and was attempting to fry eggs, though from the smell, he wasn't having much success. I wouldn't quit your day job, she teased, taking the pan from him. He laughed, a warm sound that filled the small kitchen. Cooking was never my strong suit. Hannah says my biscuits could sink a riverboat. Smart girl, Belle replied, scraping the burnt eggs into the slop bucket for the pigs. How are you feeling today? Better. Much better. He rotated his shoulder carefully. I think I'm ready to start planning my journey to Willow Creek. Belle nodded, trying to ignore the sudden heaviness in her chest. Of course he needed to leave. His daughter was waiting for him. Your horse is recovered as well. We can check the supplies to see what you'll need. They spent the morning taking inventory. Belle insisted on providing him with enough food for the journey, plus extra bandages and medicine for his wound, which was healing well but still needed care. I can't take all this, Ike protested as she packed a bag with jerky, biscuits, dried fruit, and coffee. You can and you will, Belle said firmly. I won't have your daughter becoming an orphan because you're too proud to accept help. Ike caught her hand, his fingers warm around hers. I'll pay you back, every cent. There's no need, there is to me, he interrupted. A man pays his debts, Belle. The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. She withdrew her hand, suddenly flustered. Very well. As they continued preparations, a thought nagged at Belle. These men who attacked you, what if they're still out there? What if they come after you again? Ike's jaw tightened. I've considered that. I'll have to be careful, take a different route. Even so, you're still recovering if they find you. She didn't need to finish the thought. What choice do I have? Hannah is waiting. Belle took a deep breath. I could go with you. Ike stared at her. What? I could go with you, she repeated with more conviction. 2 riders are safer than 1. I'm a good shot and I know this territory as well as anyone. Belle, I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. She met his gaze squarely. Besides, I haven't been further than Redemption Creek in years. Maybe it's time I saw more of the world. Ike studied her face, searching for something. What about your homestead? My neighbor, Mr. Johnson, has been wanting to graze his cattle on my land. He'd be happy to keep an eye on things for a week or two. Belle had already thought this through during a sleepless night. I can be ready by tomorrow morning. Why would you do this for a stranger? Ike asked softly. Belle couldn't fully explain it to herself, let alone to him. She only knew that the thought of him facing those dangers alone while still weakened from his wound filled her with dread. And beneath that, a more selfish truth. She wasn't ready to say goodbye. Because no child should have to wonder if their father is coming home, she said finally. And because you're not exactly a stranger anymore, are you? The journey to Willow Creek began at dawn the following day. Belle had arranged with old Mr. Johnson to watch over her property, pack supplies for both of them, and saddled her sturdy mare alongside Ike's gelding. She wore men's trousers beneath her split riding skirt practical for long days in the saddle, and carried her Winchester rifle in a scabbard within easy reach. They traveled northwest, avoiding the main roads. The weather held fair, with clear skies and mild temperatures unusual for early autumn. By unspoken agreement, they kept conversation light during the day, focusing on the journey and stopping occasionally to rest and check Ike's wound. At night, they made camp wherever they could find shelter, once in an abandoned line shack, twice under rock outcroppings that offered protection from the wind. It was during these quiet evenings, sitting by the fire, that they really talked. Did you always want children? Ike asked on the second night, his face half illuminated by the dancing flames. Belle poked at the fire with a stick. Yes, for as long as I can remember. When I was a girl, I had names picked out: Elizabeth for a daughter, James for a son. She smiled wistfully. I used to dress my dolls in clothes I sewed myself and pretend they were my babies. I never thought about being a father, Ike admitted. When Lily Hannah's mother told me she was expecting, I was terrified. What changed the first time I held Hannah? His voice grew soft with the memory. She was so tiny, all red-faced and squalling. She wrapped her little hand around my finger and I just knew. Everything changed in that moment. Belle swallowed past the lump in her throat. You must have loved Lily very much. Ike was quiet for a long moment. We were young. It wasn't a grand love story, if that's what you're thinking. We'd known each other a few months when she got pregnant. I did the honorable thing, proposed right away. We were trying to make it work when complications came during the birth. He stared into the flames. I didn't get to say goodbye. I'm sorry, Belle whispered. Hannah's the best part of both of us, he said. I see Lily in her smile, her stubbornness. I like to think she got her sense of adventure from me. He looked up at Belle. What about your husband? Did he want children as much as you did? Thomas wanted sons, Belle corrected. Heirs for his grand ambitions. When I couldn't provide them, he decided I was defective somehow. The old bitterness crept into her voice despite her efforts to keep it neutral. The doctor in Cheyenne said there was nothing physically wrong with me that he could find, but Thomas needed someone to blame. He was a fool, Ike said with unexpected vehemence. Belle looked at him in surprise. Pardon? A man who abandons his wife because she can't bear children is a fool, Ike repeated. There are plenty of children in this world who need loving homes. If he truly wanted a family with you, there were other ways. The simplicity of his statement struck Belle deeply. In all the years of blame and shame, no one had ever suggested such a thing, that her worth as a wife went beyond her ability to bear children, that a family could be made in different ways. I've never thought of it like that, she admitted. Maybe you should, Ike said gently. They lapsed into silence, but something had shifted between them. As Belle wrapped herself in her blankets later that night, she found herself wondering what might have been if she'd met a man like Isaac Xavier instead of Thomas Spencer all those years ago. On the third day of their journey, they encountered trouble. They had stopped to rest the horses by a small creek around midday when Belle noticed dust on the horizon. "Riders," she said, pointing. "3 of them coming fast." Ike squinted in the direction she indicated, his face hardening. "We need to move. Now." They mounted quickly, urging their horses up a narrow ravine that offered some cover, but their pursuers had spotted them and were closing the distance rapidly. "It's them," Ike confirmed grimly as they reached higher ground. "Blackwell's men." Belle's heart pounded as she assessed their options. The terrain ahead was exposed, offering little protection. Behind them, the ravine would funnel them into a trap. "There," she pointed to a rocky outcropping about half a mile ahead. "If we can reach those rocks, we'll have a defensible position." Ike nodded, and they spurred their horses forward. The sound of gunshots rang out behind them, bullets kicking up dirt but falling short of their targets. Belle's mare was faster, pulling ahead of Ike's gelding. She reached the rocks first, dismounting swiftly and tethering her horse in a protected hollow. Ike was still 50 yards out when she saw his horse stumble, hit by a bullet. The animal went down hard, throwing Ike clear but leaving him exposed on open ground. Without hesitation, Belle grabbed her Winchester and took up position among the rocks. She sighted down the barrel at the approaching riders and fired. Her first shot missed, but it forced the men to scatter and take cover, giving Ike precious seconds to scramble toward the rocks. "Are you hurt?" she asked breathlessly as he joined her, crouching low. "Just bruised," he panted, drawing his revolver. "Good shooting. Save your praise, they've got us pinned." The 3 men had dismounted and spread out, using the terrain for cover as they worked their way closer. Occasional shots thudded into the rocks around them. "I recognize 2 of them," Ike said grimly. "The one on the left is Tom Ryder, the big one is Bill Hawkins. They both ride for Blackwell." A voice called out from behind a boulder about 100 yards away. "Xavier, we know you're there. Come on out and we might let the woman live." "Don't you believe it," Ike murmured to Belle. "They can't leave witnesses." Belle nodded, her mouth set in a determined line. "What's the plan?" "We need to even the odds." Ike peered around the edge of a rock. "If I can draw their fire from this side, maybe you can circle behind that fallen log and get a clear shot at one of them." Belle assessed the distance, about 30 yards of exposed ground to reach the log. Dangerous, but possible. "All right. On your signal." Ike squeezed her arm briefly. "Be careful." He waited for a lull in the shooting, then suddenly fired 3 rapid shots toward the men's positions. As they returned fire, focusing on Ike's location, Belle darted from the rocks, running low and fast toward the log. She made it, throwing herself behind the rotting trunk just as bullets splintered the wood near her head. From this new position, she had a clear view of one of the attackers, the man Ike had identified as Hawkins. Taking careful aim, she squeezed the trigger. The big man jerked and fell, clutching his shoulder. His howl of pain echoed across the landscape. "Bill's hit," one of the other men shouted. Belle used the momentary confusion to fire again, this time at movement she spotted behind a clump of sagebrush. She couldn't tell if she hit anyone, but the return fire became more sporadic and less accurate. Ike, meanwhile, had repositioned among the rocks and managed to get a shot at the 3rd man, who cursed loudly as the bullet grazed his leg. "This is your last chance," Ike called out. "The lady's a crack shot, as you've noticed. Leave now, or the next bullets won't be warnings." There was a tense silence, broken only by Hawkins's pained groaning. Then the sound of hushed, urgent conversation drifted to them. "They're backing off," Belle whispered as she watched the men retreating to their horses, half carrying the wounded Hawkins. "Don't let your guard down yet," Ike warned. Sure enough, as the men mounted, Ryder turned in his saddle and fired one final vindictive shot in their direction before galloping away, followed by his companions. Only when the dust of their departure had settled did Belle and Ike emerge from cover, meeting halfway between their positions. Without thinking, Belle threw her arms around him, overcome with relief that they had both survived. Ike held her tightly, his heart hammering against hers. "You were magnificent," he said into her hair. Belle pulled back slightly, suddenly aware of their proximity. Ike's face was inches from hers, his blue eyes intense and questioning. For a moment she thought he might kiss her and realized with a jolt that she wanted him to. Instead, he released her gently. "We should get moving. They might come back with reinforcements." Reality crashed back in. Belle nodded, stepping away. "Your horse?" Ike grimaced. "Dead. We'll have to double up on yours until we can find a replacement." They collected what they could salvage from Ike's saddle bags and mounted Belle's mare together, Ike behind Belle with his arms around her waist to hold the reins. Despite the danger they just faced, or perhaps because of it, Belle was acutely aware of his solid presence at her back, the warmth of his chest against her shoulders. They rode hard for several hours, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the site of the confrontation. When they finally stopped to make camp in a sheltered canyon, exhaustion hit them both. "One more day to Willow Creek," Ike said as they shared a cold meal, too tired to risk a fire. "We should reach my sister's place by tomorrow evening." Belle nodded, trying not to think about what would happen when they arrived. She would meet Hannah, ensure Ike was safely reunited with his daughter, and then what? Return to her solitary existence at the homestead. The prospect felt emptier now than it had just a week ago. "Those men will report back to Blackwell," she said, changing the subject. "What will you do?" Ike's expression was troubled. "I don't know. I can't put Hannah and my sister at risk by staying there, but I don't have enough money yet to move us somewhere else." "What does Blackwell want with you anyway? You're just one man." "It started with a parcel of land," Ike explained. "I worked for a small rancher named Cooper last year. He owned a strategic piece of property that controlled access to a valley Blackwell wanted. When Cooper refused to sell, things got ugly. I stood with Cooper when Blackwell's men came to intimidate him." His jaw tightened. "Cooper ended up dead in what they called an accident. I knew better but couldn't prove it. I took the job driving cattle to get enough money to move Hannah somewhere safe." "And now Blackwell thinks you might talk about what happened to Cooper," Belle surmised. Ike nodded grimly. "A man like that doesn't leave loose ends." Belle studied his face in the fading light. "What if you came back with me, to my homestead? It's isolated, defensible. Blackwell has no interests that far east." The offer surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. It had formed in her mind without conscious thought, but as soon as the words were spoken, she knew she meant them. "Belle, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition if I'm inviting you," she interrupted. "There's plenty of room. Hannah could have a stable home. You could help me build up the place. I've been wanting to increase my cattle herd." Ike was silent for a long moment, studying her face. "Why would you do that for us?" Belle looked away, unable to meet his intense gaze. "Maybe I'm tired of being alone," she said softly. "Or maybe I just think a little girl deserves to grow up somewhere safe with her father." Ike reached across the space between them and took her hand. "And what would people say? A single woman taking in a man and his child. People will talk regardless of what I do," Belle said with a shrug. "I stopped caring about their opinions years ago." This wasn't entirely true. The whispers and stares still hurt, but she found that they mattered less when weighed against the prospect of helping Ike and Hannah. "Let me think on it," Ike said finally. "We should focus on reaching Hannah first." Belle nodded, withdrawing her hand. "Of course." She wrapped herself in her blanket and turned away. not wanting him to see the hope that had kindled in her heart or the fear that it would be extinguished. The final day of their journey was tense but uneventful. They avoided the main trails, Belle's mare carrying them steadily northwest toward Willow Creek. As they crested a rise late in the afternoon, the small settlement came into view in the valley below. "There it is," Ike said, his voice tight with emotion. "My sister's place is on the northern edge, near that stand of cottonwoods." They rode directly there, bypassing the town itself. A modest cabin with a well-tended garden came into view, smoke rising from the chimney. As they approached, the door flew open, and a small figure with flying dark hair raced out. "Papa, Papa!" Ike practically leapt from the horse, dropping to one knee as the child threw herself into his arms. "Hannah," he breathed, holding her tight, his face buried in her hair. Belle dismounted more slowly, hanging back to give them their moment. Her heart constricted at the sight of their reunion, the love between them palpable even from a distance. Hannah was exactly as Ike had described her, a whirlwind of energy with bright green eyes and dark hair like her father's. She was chattering excitedly, her small hands patting Ike's face as if to confirm he was real. A woman appeared in the doorway of the cabin, tall and angular with the same blue eyes as Ike. She approached Belle with a questioning look. "You must be Ike's sister," Belle said, extending her hand. "I'm Isabella Spencer. Your brother was injured on his journey home. I found him on my property and helped him get back to you." "Martha Xavier," the woman replied, shaking Belle's hand firmly. "Seems we owe you a debt of gratitude, Miss Spencer." "Belle, please. And there's no debt. Anyone would have done the same." Martha's shrewd gaze suggested she didn't quite believe that, but she nodded. "Well, you must be exhausted. Come inside, both of you. Dinner's nearly ready, and you can tell me the whole story." Inside the cabin was warm and homey, with simple furnishings and colorful quilts. Hannah barely let go of her father long enough for him to wash up, clinging to his leg and peppering him with questions. When she finally noticed Belle, she stared with frank curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked bluntly. "Hannah," Ike admonished gently, "where are your manners? This is Miss Belle. She helped me when I was hurt and made sure I got back to you safely." Hannah considered this for a moment, then walked over to Belle and looked up at her solemnly. "Thank you for bringing my papa home." Something inside Belle's chest melted at the child's earnest gratitude. She knelt down to be at eye level with Hannah. "You're very welcome. Your papa talked about you the whole way here. He missed you very much." Hannah beamed, revealing a missing front tooth. "I'm 5 3/4, she announced, "and I can read almost all my letters now." "That's very impressive," Belle said seriously. "Papa promised to teach me to ride a real horse when he got back," Hannah continued. "Not just sitting in front of him, but all by myself." Ike and Martha exchanged a look over the child's head that Belle couldn't quite interpret. "We'll talk about that later, Squirrel," Ike said, using what was clearly a pet name. "Let's let Miss Belle rest now. She's had a long journey." During dinner, Belle observed the family dynamics with interest. Martha was clearly devoted to her niece, but seemed relieved that her brother had returned to resume his parental duties. Hannah was bright and precocious, exactly as Ike had described her, talking nonstop about everything that had happened in her father's absence. When Hannah had finally been put to bed after extracting multiple promises from Ike that he would still be there, when she woke, the adults settled around the kitchen table. Ike explained everything that had happened, from the ambush to Belle's rescue and their journey, including the confrontation with Blackwell's men. Martha's face grew increasingly grave. "They won't stop coming after you, Ike. Not as long as you're anywhere near Blackwell territory." "I know," Ike sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been trying to figure out what to do next." "Come east with me," Belle said quietly. All eyes turned to her. "Both of you, all of you," she amended, including Martha with a glance. "My homestead is large enough. It's far from here, beyond Blackwell's reach." Martha raised her eyebrows. "That's a generous offer, Miss Spencer." "Belle has been more than generous," Ike said. "She's offered a home to Hannah and me, a fresh start. And what exactly would your arrangement be?" Martha asked bluntly, looking between them. Belle felt heat rise in her cheeks. "A partnership. The homestead needs a man's labor to really thrive. In exchange for Ike's help, he and Hannah would have a safe place to live." She hesitated. "And Hannah would have a woman's influence in her life." "You're not married," Martha stated the obvious. "No," Belle admitted. "And I understand how it might look, but my nearest neighbors are 5 miles away. What they think hardly matters." Martha's expression softened slightly. "It's not judgment, Miss Spencer. I'm just concerned for my brother and niece. Starting over isn't easy." "I know that better than most," Belle replied. Later, when Martha had retired for the night, Belle and Ike stepped outside for a private conversation. The night was clear and cool, stars brilliantly visible above the small town. "Your sister doesn't approve of me," Belle said without preamble. "Martha's protective," Ike replied. "She's raised me since our parents died when I was 12. Old habits die hard." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant howl of a coyote. "Did you mean what you said?" Ike asked finally. "About the partnership," Belle nodded slowly. "I did. But I understand if you have reservations. We barely know each other and you'd be uprooting Hannah again." "Hannah's adaptable. And sometimes you know a person better after a week of hardship than you might after years of casual acquaintance." He turned to face her directly. "What I don't understand is what you get out of this arrangement." Belle looked away, unable to articulate the fullness of her feelings. How could she explain that in the short time she'd known him, Ike had awakened something she thought had died years ago: hope, possibility, the chance to be more than the barren woman everyone pitied or scorned. "Company," she said simply. "A chance to hear a child's laughter in my home, help with work that's becoming too much for me alone." She met his eyes again. "Is that enough?" Ike studied her face in the moonlight. "It could be, but there's something else I need to know." "What's that?" "If we do this, if Hannah and I come to live with you, what would you want from me? Beyond labor, I mean." Belle understood what he was asking. "Nothing you're not willing to give," she said softly. "I'm not looking to replace Hannah's mother, and I'm not offering to be your wife, just a friend. A partner, maybe something more someday if that's what we both want." Ike nodded slowly. "I respect that, and I want to be honest with you too. I haven't thought about a woman that way since Lily died. Haven't had the time or inclination, but these past few days with you—" He trailed off, seeming to search for words. "You don't need to say anything more," Belle assured him. "There's no rush to define what this is or might become." Ike surprised her by taking her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against hers. "Thank you for everything." The simple sincerity in his voice touched Belle deeply. She squeezed his hand in response, unwilling to trust her voice. "I'd like to accept your offer," Ike continued, "but I need a few days to settle things here. Martha can't come with us, she has her life here, her friends. And I need to make sure Hannah understands what's happening, that we're not just visiting but making a new home." "Of course," Belle agreed. "I can wait. Would you stay, meet Hannah properly, let her get to know you before we make the journey?" The request warmed Belle's heart. "I'd like that." They spent the next 3 days in Willow Creek. Belle quickly discovered that winning over a 5-year-old was both easier and more challenging than she had anticipated. Hannah was naturally curious about this new adult in her life, particularly one who had rescued her beloved father. but she was also possessive of Ike's attention and occasionally wary when Belle and Ike seemed too friendly with each other. "Are you going to be my new mother?" Hannah asked bluntly on the second day, as Belle helped her collect eggs from Martha's chicken coop. Belle nearly dropped the egg she was holding. "No, Hannah, I'm not trying to replace your mother." "Good," Hannah said decisively, "because I already have a mama even if she's in heaven. Aunt Martha showed me her picture. She was very pretty." "I'm sure she was," Belle said gently. "And very special." Hannah nodded, carefully placing an egg in her basket. "Papa says I look like her." "You have her beautiful green eyes," Belle agreed, remembering what Ike had told her. "If you're not going to be my mama, what will you be?" Hannah persisted. Belle considered her answer carefully. "I'll be your friend if you'd like, and you and your papa will live at my house, which will become your house too." Hannah thought about this for a moment. "Like Aunt Martha's house is Papa's house too when we stay here." "Something like that, yes." "And you'll teach me things." "Aunt Martha taught me to bake cookies and count to 20. Belle smiled. "I'd be happy to teach you things. I know how to make quilts and grow vegetables and identify different birds. Would you like to learn those things?" Hannah's eyes widened with interest. "Yes." "And can I have chickens to take care of?" "Aunt Martha lets me feed hers." "We already have chickens at the homestead," Belle told her. "You can help me collect eggs every morning if you want." "I'd be very careful," Hannah assured her earnestly. "I never drop eggs anymore. Well, hardly ever." Belle laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her with its freedom. "That's very good to know." By the third day, Hannah had warmed to Belle considerably, even taking her hand sometimes when they walked together. Martha, too, had softened her initial reservations after observing the gentle way Belle interacted with her niece. "You're good with her," Martha commented as they prepared dinner together. "Patient. Not everyone has that quality with children." "She makes it easy," Belle replied. "She's a wonderful girl." Martha glanced toward the front yard, where Ike was showing Hannah how to whittle a simple whistle from a stick, a going-away present for her friend next door. "She's had her share of difficulties. Losing her mother, moving around with Ike as he found work. She needs stability." "I hope to provide that," Belle said sincerely. Martha studied her for a moment. "You love him, don't you?" The direct question caught Belle off guard. That's not, it's all right," Martha interrupted gently. "I see how you look at him when you think no one's watching. And how he looks at you sometimes." Belle felt her cheeks grow warm. "If you're worried about propriety, I'm worried about my brother's heart," Martha corrected. "And that little girl out there who's already lost one mother. Ike hasn't allowed himself to care for anyone since Lily died. If he's opening himself up to you, it means something." "I would never hurt either of them intentionally," Belle said quietly. "I believe you," Martha replied. "Just be sure of what you want before you go too far down this road. All three of you deserve happiness." On the morning of departure, the small house was a flurry of activity. Martha had packed food for their journey, and Ike had purchased a gentle mare for himself, leaving the stronger gelding he'd bought in town for Belle. Hannah was excited about the adventure ahead but tearful about saying goodbye to her aunt. "You'll visit us, won't you?" Hannah asked Martha for the third time, clinging to her skirts. "As soon as I can, squirrel," Martha promised, kneeling to embrace her niece. "And you'll write to me every week, or have your papa write for you until you learn all your letters." "Belle said she'll help me practice writing," Hannah informed her aunt. "She knows all the letters, even the hard ones like Q and Z." Martha smiled over the child's head at Belle. "I'm sure she does." She rose and embraced her brother tightly. "Be careful on the journey and be happy, Ike. You deserve it." "You too, Martha," he replied gruffly. "Thank you for everything." The three travelers set off just after sunrise, Hannah riding in front of Ike for the first part of the journey. Belle led the way east, retracing the route she and Ike had taken, but avoiding the areas where they'd encountered trouble. The journey back to Redemption Creek took 5 days, longer than the outbound trip due to Hannah's presence. They traveled at a more leisurely pace, stopping frequently to rest and ensuring they made camp early each evening to give the child time to play and explore before darkness fell. Belle watched with growing affection as Ike parented his daughter. He was patient and kind but firm when needed, always taking time to explain things to Hannah rather than simply imposing rules. The little girl clearly adored her father, following him like a shadow when they made camp and falling asleep each night curled trustingly against his side. On the 4th night, as they camped beside a small stream, Hannah fell asleep earlier than usual, exhausted from a day of travel and an impromptu swimming lesson in a shallow pool. As Belle and Ike sat by the fire, he spoke softly to avoid waking his daughter. "Thank you for being so good with her," he said. "This journey would have been much harder without your help." Belle smiled. "She's a joy to be around. You've raised her well, Ike." "I've done my best," he said with a hint of uncertainty. "Sometimes I worry it's not enough. That she needs more than I can give her alone." "All parents worry about that," Belle assured him, though she had only observation rather than experience to draw from. "What matters is that she knows she's loved." "She does know that," Ike said confidently. "It's the one thing I've made sure of every day of her life." They fell silent for a moment, watching the flames dance. In the firelight, Ike's face was all plains and shadows, handsome in a rugged way that Belle found increasingly difficult to ignore. "Belle," he said suddenly, his voice low, "there's something I need to say before we reach your homestead, before we start this arrangement." Her heart quickened. "What is it?" Ike met her gaze directly. "I don't want to be just your hired hand or your tenant." "I never thought of you that way," Belle said softly. "Good. Because these past 2 weeks, getting to know you, I've felt something I haven't felt in a very long time." He hesitated, searching for words. "I know this is fast, maybe too fast, but life out here doesn't always give us the luxury of time." Belle held her breath, afraid to hope for what his words might mean. "I care for you, Belle," Ike continued. "More than I expected to. More than I thought I could care for anyone again after Lily. And if we're going to live together, raise Hannah together, I want to do it right." "What are you saying, Ike?" Belle whispered. He reached across and took her hand. "I'm saying that I don't want to start our new life together with half-truths or conveniences. If we're going to be a family and that's what I want us to be, then I want to court you properly. And if things continue as they have been between us, I want to marry you. Not right away," he added quickly, "but someday when we're both ready." Belle's eyes filled with tears. "Ike, you barely know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave and kind. I know you took in a stranger and risked your life to help him return to his daughter. I know you faced cruelty and hardship without letting it make you cruel or hard. I know Hannah likes you, which counts for more than anything else." He smiled slightly. "The rest, we can learn together." Belle found herself without words, overwhelmed by emotions she'd kept carefully controlled for years. Hope, fear, longing, all tangled together in a knot she couldn't unravel. "You don't have to answer now," Ike assured her, seeing her struggle. "Just know where I stand. Where I hope we might stand together eventually." Before she could find her voice, a small sound from Hannah drew their attention. The child had stirred in her sleep, mumbling something incoherent. Ike immediately went to her, adjusting her blanket and soothing her back to deeper sleep with a gentle hand on her back. Watching him, Belle made her decision. "Yes," she said when he returned to the fire. "Yes," he repeated, uncertain of which question she was answering. "Yes to courting. Yes to seeing where this leads us." Belle took a deep breath. I care for you too, Ike, and for Hannah. More than I thought possible in such a short time. I don't know if I'm ready to think about marriage yet, but I'm ready to try building something with you, together." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after a long night. "That's all I'm asking for, Belle. A chance to try." They reached Belle's homestead late the following afternoon. As they crested the final rise, Belle felt a curious mixture of emotions, the familiar comfort of returning home, combined with a new nervousness about how Ike and Hannah would see her modest property. "Is that it?" Hannah asked excitedly, pointing to the cabin and barn nestled in the shallow valley below. "That's it," Belle confirmed. "That's home." "It's bigger than Aunt Martha's house," Hannah exclaimed. Belle laughed. "The house isn't much larger, but there's more land. See those fields? In the spring, we'll plant corn and wheat there, and those trees along the creek provide shade in summer where you can play." "Are there fish in the creek?" Hannah wanted to know. "Papa taught me to fish once." "There are," Belle assured her. "Trout mostly. They're delicious when fried fresh." As they approached the cabin, old Mr. Johnson came out to greet them. He'd clearly been taking his caretaking duties seriously. The yard was swept, and smoke rose from the chimney, indicating he'd lit a fire to warm the house for their arrival. "Welcome back, Miss Spencer," he called, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Everything's just as you left it. Mrs. Johnson sent over some fresh bread and stew this morning when we saw the dust of your approach." "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That was very thoughtful." Belle dismounted and made introductions. "This is Mr. Xavier and his daughter Hannah. They'll be living here now, helping me with the homestead." If Johnson was surprised by this announcement, he hit it well. "Pleased to meet you both. Always said Miss Spencer needed more hands around this place." He tipped his hat to Hannah. "My grandchildren live over our way. Similar age to you, young lady. Perhaps you can visit sometime." Hannah, suddenly shy, nodded but pressed closer to her father's leg. After Johnson departed, Belle led Ike and Hannah inside the cabin. She saw it anew through their eyes, the main room with its stone fireplace and simple furnishings, the small kitchen area with her mother's china displayed on open shelves, the two bedrooms separated by a curtain rather than a wall. "It's not much," she began apologetically. "It's perfect," Ike interrupted, surveying the space with approval. "Solid construction, good chimney draw, room to expand if needed." Hannah had already discovered Belle's collection of books on a small shelf. "Look, Papa, books." She turned to Belle with wide eyes. "Do you read all of these?" "I do," Belle smiled. "And you're welcome to read them too once you learn how." "I already know some words," Hannah said proudly. "CAT spells cat and DOG spells dog." "That's wonderful," Belle praised. "Perhaps we can add a new word each day." While Hannah explored the cabin, Ike and Belle discussed sleeping arrangements. The second bedroom had been Belle's sewing room, containing only a narrow cot she sometimes used for afternoon rests. "Hannah can have my bedroom for now," Belle suggested. "I'll take the cot until we can build proper beds," Ike frowned. "I won't displace you from your own bed, Belle. Hannah and I can make do in the smaller room." "Nonsense. She needs a proper place to sleep. I don't mind the cot temporarily." Their first minor disagreement was interrupted by Hannah tugging at Belle's skirt. "Is there a outhouse?" she asked in a whisper. "I need to go." Belle smiled and took her hand. "Of course. Let me show you." By the time they returned, Ike had brought in their bags and was stoking the fire. "Johnson left us well supplied with firewood," he commented. "Seems like a good neighbor." "The Johnsons have been kind to me, even when others in town weren't," Belle said simply. "They're good people." They ate Mrs. Johnson's stew for dinner, Hannah chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to do in her new home: collect eggs, fish in the creek, learn to ride her own horse. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Belle found herself making plans aloud: a vegetable garden where Hannah could have her own small plot, chickens she could help raise from chicks, perhaps even a gentle pony when she was a bit older. "Can we get a dog?" Hannah asked hopefully. "Aunt Martha wouldn't let me have one because her cat wouldn't like it." Belle glanced at Ike, not wanting to overstep. He nodded slightly, leaving the decision to her. "I think a dog would be a wonderful addition," Belle said. "Every homestead needs a good dog to help watch the livestock and warn of strangers." Hannah beamed. "Can I help pick it? Can we get a puppy?" "We'll see what's available," Ike interjected before Hannah could get too carried away with plans. "But first, we need to get settled here and help Miss Belle with all the work that needs doing." "You can call her Belle, Papa," Hannah informed him seriously. "She told me so." Both adults laughed, the sound filling the cabin with warmth that had nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. That night, after Hannah had been tucked into Belle's bed protesting all the while that she wasn't tired despite her drooping eyelids, Ike and Belle sat together on the porch. The autumn air was crisp, but not yet bitter with winter's chill. "She seems happy here already," Belle observed. "She adapts quickly," Ike replied. "It's a gift children have that we lose as adults." "I hope she continues to be happy. It's a big change for her." "For all of us," Ike pointed out, his hand finding Belle's in the darkness. "But a good one, I think." Belle's fingers twined with his naturally, as if they'd been holding hands for years rather than days. "I think so too." The days fell into a new rhythm as autumn deepened toward winter. Belle showed Ike the workings of the homestead: the small herd of cattle that needed tending, the repairs the barn required before snow came, the fences that needed mending. He proved to be skilled and hardworking, often anticipating needs before Belle mentioned them. Hannah quickly adapted to life on the homestead, finding joy in simple tasks like gathering eggs and helping Belle in the kitchen. True to her word, Belle taught the child a new word each day, writing it carefully on a slate and helping Hannah practice until she could recognize it on sight. Belle found herself slipping naturally into a maternal role, though she was careful never to position herself as a replacement for Hannah's mother. When the little girl asked questions about Lily, Belle encouraged her to talk to Ike about her memories and feelings. "It's important to remember her," Belle told Hannah one afternoon as they kneaded bread dough together. "She'll always be your mother, no matter what." Hannah nodded solemnly, her small hands mimicking Belle's movements. "Papa says she would be happy that we found you. That some people get extra lucky and have two mothers, one in heaven watching over them and one on earth to take care of them." Belle's hands stilled in the dough. "Did he really say that?" "Uh-huh," Hannah affirmed. "Last night when he was tucking me in. I asked if it was okay that I liked you so much, and that's what he told me." Tears pricked Belle's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "Your papa is a very wise man. He also said you make the best apple pie he's ever tasted," Hannah added with a grin. "Even better than Aunt Martha's, but I'm not supposed to tell her that." Belle laughed, the moment of emotion passing. "Then we'll keep that our secret." True to his word, Ike began courting Belle properly. Despite living under the same roof, he maintained a respectful distance, never entering her bedroom without invitation, and always ensuring Hannah was present when they were together in the evenings. But there were stolen moments, a brush of hands as they passed each other in the kitchen, quiet conversations after Hannah was asleep, a single kiss on the porch one crisp October evening that left Belle breathless and wanting more. 3 weeks after their arrival, they made their first trip into Redemption Creek for supplies. Belle was anxious about facing the town gossips with Ike and Hannah in tow, but she squared her shoulders with determination as they rode into town. The whispers started almost immediately. Women huddled in groups outside the general store. Men paused in their conversations to stare as Belle, Ike, and Hannah made their way down the main street. "Just ignore them," Belle murmured to Ike. "I've faced worse than small-town gossips," he replied calmly, placing a protective hand on Hannah's shoulder. In the general store, Mrs. Peterson, the owner's wife and Redemption Creek's most notorious busybody, wasted no time in approaching them. "Why, Miss Spencer," she said with false sweetness. "We haven't seen you in town for some time, and I see you've brought company." Her eyes raked over Ike and Hannah with undisguised curiosity. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson," Belle replied evenly. "Yes, this is Mr. Xavier and his daughter Hannah. They've come to live at my homestead. Mr. Xavier is helping me expand the cattle operation." Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows rose. "Indeed, how progressive of you and the child. She's staying with you as well." "I'm 5 3/4, Hannah announced before either adult could respond. "And Belle is teaching me to read and bake bread and take care of chickens." Something in the child's innocent declaration seemed to soften Mrs. Peterson slightly. "Is that so? Well, we always need more educated young ladies in these parts." She turned to Ike. "And you, Mr. Xavier, what brings you to our little corner of Wyoming? A fresh start," Ike answered simply. "And the opportunity to work with Miss Spencer. She's been kind enough to open her home to Hannah and me." "Has she indeed?" Mrs. Peterson's tone made the innocent words sound scandalous. Belle felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Ike continued smoothly. "Yes, it's not easy for a child to grow up without a mother's influence. Hannah's mother passed when she was born. Miss Spencer has been a blessing to us both." The direct mention of Hannah's deceased mother changed the atmosphere subtly. Mrs. Peterson's expression shifted from prurient interest to something approaching sympathy. "I see," she said more gently. "Well, Miss Spencer always did have a way with children from what I recall. Used to help in the Sunday school before." She trailed off awkwardly. "Before the whispers and stares became too much to bear," Belle finished for her, keeping her voice level despite the old pain. "Yes, I did enjoy teaching the children. Perhaps I'll offer to help again, now that Hannah will be attending." Mrs. Peterson seemed taken aback by Belle's directness. "That would be. I'm sure Reverend Phillips would appreciate the assistance." By the time they left the store with their supplies, Belle could tell that the nature of the whispers had changed. There was still speculation, certainly, but the presence of a motherless child had altered the narrative from scandalous to potentially touching. "You handled that well," Ike commented as they loaded their purchases into the wagon they'd borrowed from Mr. Johnson. Belle smiled wryly. "Small towns run on gossip. Better to give them something almost wholesome to talk about than leave it entirely to their imaginations." "Was it true?" "About teaching at the Sunday school?" Belle nodded, a shadow crossing her face. "I loved it, but after Thomas left, some parents became concerned about my influence on their children, as if my barrenness might somehow affect them through proximity." She shook her head at the memory. "Reverend Phillips never asked me to stop coming, but I could see the discomfort. It seemed easier to withdraw." Ike's jaw tightened. "Their loss and their children's." "Maybe," Belle said thoughtfully, "but things change, people change." She glanced at Hannah, who was proudly carrying a small package of candy Ike had purchased for her. "I've changed." The winter months brought them closer together as a family. Heavy snows often kept them homebound for days at a time. The three of them cocooned in the warmth of the cabin while the wind howled outside. Belle taught Hannah to sew simple stitches and read increasingly complex words. Ike built furniture, a proper bed frame for the second bedroom where he now slept, shelves for Belle's kitchen, a small desk where Hannah could practice her letters. In the evenings, They would gather by the fire, Ike whittling or mending harnesses, Belle knitting or sewing, Hannah playing with the carved animals Ike made for her or practicing her reading. Sometimes Ike would play harmonica, a skill Belle hadn't known he possessed until one quiet evening when he pulled the instrument from his pocket and filled the cabin with sweet, melancholy music. "My father played," he explained when she commented on his talent. "He taught me when I was about Hannah's age." "Play the one about the cowboy, Papa," Hannah requested, and Ike obliged with a lively rendition of the old Kishome trail that had Hannah clapping along. When Hannah had gone to bed, Ike often moved to sit beside Belle on the small sofa he had built, sometimes reading together from one of her books, sometimes just talking in low voices about their days, their hopes, their pasts. It was during one such evening in late January, with snow falling gently outside and the fire burning low, that Ike finally asked Belle directly about the nickname that had followed her for years. "Why did they call you Barren?" he asked quietly. "It seems unusually cruel, even for small-minded people." Belle was silent for a long moment, her hand still on the quilt she was piecing. "It started with Thomas," she said finally. "When we'd been married for 3 years with no child, he began to grow frustrated. After 5 years, he consulted the doctor in town, who suggested the problem might be with me." She sighed. "Thomas wasn't discreet about his disappointment. He began referring to me that way to his friends when he'd had too much to drink. 'My barren wife,' he'd say." The name stuck, especially after he left. Ike's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I'm sorry." "The worst part wasn't the name itself," Belle continued, needing to explain fully. "It was how it reduced me to a single failure. As if nothing else about me mattered, not my skills, my kindness, my efforts to be a good wife and neighbor. Just that one thing I couldn't do defined me entirely." "It doesn't define you," Ike said firmly. "Not to me, and not to Hannah." Belle smiled faintly. "I know. That's been the most unexpected gift of these past months, rediscovering who I am beyond that label." She hesitated, then added softly, "Thank you for that." Ike cupped her cheek gently, turning her face toward his. "You never needed me to be complete, Belle. You were always whole, always worthy, always enough." He kissed her then, a kiss deeper and more purposeful than the tentative ones they'd shared before. Belle leaned into him, all the longing she'd carefully contained flowing into that connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Ike rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I have almost from the beginning." Belle's heart soared at the words. "I love you too," she whispered. "You and Hannah both." Ike pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "Marry me," he said. "Not someday. Soon. Be my wife, Belle. Be Hannah's mother in name as well as in your heart." Joy bubbled up inside her, unexpected and overwhelming. "Yes," she managed through the emotion tightening her throat. "Yes, I'll marry you." Spring came early that year, melting the snow and bringing new life to the land. Belle's garden sprouted green shoots, the cattle delivered healthy calves, and the chicken coop was filled with fluffy new chicks that delighted Hannah. They were married on a perfect April morning, with Reverend Phillips officiating in the small church in Redemption Creek. The entire town turned out for the occasion, some out of genuine goodwill, others from curiosity, but all contributing to a celebration larger than Belle would have imagined possible. Hannah served as flower girl, scattering wildflower petals down the aisle with solemn concentration, before breaking into a gap-toothed grin as she reached Belle at the altar. Martha had traveled from Willow Creek for the occasion, bringing with her a quilt she had made as a wedding gift. Even Mrs. Peterson seemed genuinely pleased for them, tearfully telling Belle after the ceremony, "I always knew you'd make a wonderful mother, dear." Sometimes God works in mysterious ways to build families. As they exchanged vows, Belle looked into Ike's eyes and saw their future reflected their years of working side by side, watching Hannah grow, perhaps expanding their family in other ways. The love between them was no longer new and tentative but deep and certain, tested by hardship and strengthened by shared purpose. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Phillips declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As Ike kissed her, sealing their union, Belle heard Hannah's excited whisper to Martha, "Now Belle really is my mother, just like Papa promised." The celebration continued at their homestead, where neighbors brought food and music and good wishes. As the afternoon waned, Belle found herself standing on the porch, watching Ike swing Hannah in circles on the lawn, both of them laughing with abandon. Martha joined her, following her gaze with a smile. "You've given them both something precious," she observed. "A home, security, love." "They've given me far more," Belle replied. "A family, purpose, acceptance." She turned to her new sister-in-law. "I never thought I'd have this, Martha. After years of being defined by what I lacked, to suddenly have so much abundance." "You deserve it," Martha assured her. "All of it." Later that night, after the guests had departed, and Hannah had fallen asleep now in her own room, decorated with the colorful quilt Martha had brought, Belle and Ike stood together in the doorway of their home, looking out at the land that was flourishing under their joint care. "Happy?" Ike asked, his arms around her waist. "Completely," Belle answered, leaning back against his solid strength. "Though I keep expecting to wake up and find this has all been a beautiful dream." Ike chuckled, the sound rumbling against her back. "If it's a dream, we're sharing it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I have no intention of waking up." "Nor I," Belle agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "Thank you for finding me, Ike, for seeing me as I truly am, not as others defined me." "They called you Barren," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But I always knew the truth." "What truth is that?" she asked. His smile was tender as he replied, "That you have more love to give than most people discover in a lifetime. Hannah sees it. I see it. Someday the rest of the world will too." "The rest of the world doesn't matter," Belle whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "Only this. Only us." As they stood together on the threshold of their home and their future, Belle felt a sense of completion she had never thought possible. She had been called barren for so long that she had almost believed it herself, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. Empty and unfulfilled. Now she knew differently. Her life was rich with love, with purpose, with family. She was a wife, a mother in every way that truly mattered, a partner in building something lasting and meaningful. The names others had called her no longer had power. She had found her true name in Ike's loving gaze, in Hannah's trusting embrace, in the home they were creating together. Isabella Xavier. Wife, mother, whole. 2 years later, Belle stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching Hannah race across the yard to greet Ike as he returned from checking the herd. At 8 years old, Hannah had grown tall and confident, excelling in the local school and taking on increasing responsibilities around the homestead. She had her father's determination and quick mind, tempered with a gentleness that Belle liked to think might have come at least partly from her influence. "Papa," Hannah called, launching herself at Ike as he dismounted. "Did you see any new calves today? Did you bring me anything from town, Mrs. Johnson says her son is bringing puppies next week and we can have first pick." Ike laughed, swinging her up into his arms despite her growing size. "Whoa there, squirrel. One question at a time." Belle smiled, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The miracle they had never expected had happened 6 months ago. She was with child. The doctor in Cheyenne had confirmed it, expressing no surprise despite knowing her history. "Sometimes the body just needs time," he had said, "or perhaps the right circumstances." Belle preferred to think of it as the right love, the right family, finally allowing her heart and body to open completely. Ike carried Hannah toward the house, both of them now noticing Belle's presence on the porch. His face lit with the same look of wonder and love. It held every time he saw her, a look that still made her heart skip, even after 2 years of marriage. "How are my girls today?" he called, setting Hannah down. "We're perfect," Belle replied, including both Hannah and the baby in her answer. "Even better now that you're home." Hannah rushed up the steps to place her small hand on Belle's stomach. "Baby sister kicked a lot today. I felt it 3 times when I was helping Belle shell peas." "Maybe baby brother," Ike reminded her with a wink at Belle. They had decided not to express a preference, though Hannah was determined the baby would be a girl. "Nope, it's a sister," Hannah insisted. "I asked for one, and Belle says God listens to children's prayers extra carefully." "Does she now?" Ike grinned, climbing the steps to kiss Belle tenderly. "Well, I suppose we'll find out soon enough." As Hannah darted inside to get the drawings she wanted to show her father, Ike wrapped his arms around Belle, his hands joining hers over their growing child. "How are you really feeling?" he asked softly. "Wonderful," Belle answered truthfully. "Tired sometimes, but wonderful." Ike's eyes were warm with love and pride. "You're amazing, you know that. Every day I think I can't possibly love you more, and every day I discover I was wrong." Belle laughed, the sound free and joyous. Such pretty words from a rugged cowboy. "Only for you," he assured her. "Always for you." Later that night, with Hannah asleep and the homestead quiet under a blanket of stars, Belle and Ike lay together in their bed, his hand gently caressing her rounded belly. "I've been thinking about names," Belle said, nestling closer to his warmth. "Oh, what do you have in mind? If it's a boy, I thought perhaps Thomas," she said quietly. "Not after my former husband," she added quickly, "but as a reminder that something beautiful can come from pain. That endings can lead to better beginnings." Ike considered this, then nodded. "Thomas Xavier, it has a strong sound to it." He kissed her temple. "And if Hannah gets her wish for a sister," Belle smiled in the darkness, "then I'd like to name her Lily, for Hannah's mother. So she'll always be part of our family." Ike's arms tightened around her, his voice thick with emotion when he spoke. "Lily Xavier, it's perfect. Are you sure?" Belle asked. "I don't want to cause pain with the reminder." "Not pain," Ike assured her. "Gratitude. For the daughter she gave me, for the love you've shown that daughter, for the family we've built together." He placed his hand over hers on her belly. "Our past is part of who we are. I wouldn't change a moment of it if it means we might not have found each other." Belle felt the baby move beneath their joined hands, a gentle flutter that still amazed her even after months of feeling it. "I used to think being called Barren was the worst thing that could happen to me," she reflected. "Now I see it was just part of the journey that brought us here." "Do you remember what I said when we first came here?" Ike asked. "When you told me what they called you," Belle nodded, the memory crystal clear despite the time that had passed. "You said I would still be mother to yours." "And you have been," Ike said softly. "From the moment Hannah met you, you've been the mother she needed, patient, loving, strong. This baby," his hand pressed gently against her belly, "is a blessing, but it doesn't make you any more a mother than you already were." Tears pricked Belle's eyes at his words. "I love you, Isaac Xavier," she whispered, "more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Isabella Xavier," he replied, sealing the words with a kiss. "Mother of my children, keeper of my heart, partner in all things." As they drifted toward sleep, wrapped in each other's arms with their unborn child nestled between them and Hannah sleeping peacefully down the hall, Belle felt a sense of completion that transcended anything she had ever imagined for herself. The woman they had called Barren had found abundance beyond measure in love, in family, in purpose. The names others gave her no longer mattered. She had discovered her true name in the eyes of those who loved her, in the life she had built with her own hands and heart. Isabella Xavier. Wife. Mother. Whole. And she was enough. She had always been enough.